Universities are often the catalyst for both community and economic change.
Discovery is the highest form of learning.
Yes. I think research as being like the purest form of experiential learning. Research at Notre Dame is not something new, but a resurgence. How do we take that research reputation and spread it across the globe?
And it seems like a deeper level of education, and the campus no longer is the classroom, but the world.
But I truly feel there's only so much I can do in front of a lecture podium, but our undergraduate programs will not be elite unless our research is fantastic.
But you're also engaging undergraduate students in these labs and in the research.
They're collaborating with people like the U.S. military, that is so rare in academia, and we are truly blessed.
From the campus of Our Lady's University, this is For Good, Stories from Notre Dame. A behind-the-scenes glimpse into life under the Golden Dome and the powerful stories that drive Notre Dame to become a force for good in the world. Hello and welcome to For Good, Stories from Notre Dame. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Jeff Rhoads, the Vice President for Research at the university. We come to you from the McCourtney Commons within Stinson-Remick Hall. In Jeff's very important role, he oversees Notre Dame's research infrastructure, supporting programs in areas of research, scholarship, and creative endeavor throughout the university. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, being part of these For Good stories. I'm really excited about the conversation. So why don't we start out and tell us a little bit about your background, both personal and the academic path that you followed to come here to this important leadership role at Notre Dame.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for this question. I think my formation kind of put me on the path where I am today, and certainly jades the way I think about my role in the job. So I grew up about 2 hours north of campus in a small town, kind of a lower middle class family. My parents worked multiple jobs, and two things that was instilled early on was kind of a hard work ethic, but also the power of education. And no one in my family had ever graduated from college up to that point. Wow. And when I was trying to decide what to do post high school, it seemed only logical that I could be the first one in my family to really take that step. And so it was a great opportunity. Through benefaction, I was able to attend Michigan State University and pursued a degree in mechanical engineering there, which I thought was a good pathway. Right. If you would have asked me 25 years ago what I was going to do, it would have been to be a practicing mechanical engineer. But a kind of unusual set of circumstances led to me having the opportunity to teach early on while pursuing my master's degree, and I fell in love with the students. And I think that's something even to today that certainly drives and inspires my work is interacting with students. Shortly after wrapping up my PhD, I decided I had to fulfill my engagement with students by becoming a professor. And so the experience in the classroom had me pursue that direction. I was hired on at Purdue University and spent 17 years there. I always joke, my first year there, they said, "You're great in the classroom, but horrible at research, get better." And I did. I thought very hard about what I wanted to do and how I could have an impact on the world. And I thought that was through looking at bigger projects and how interdisciplinary teams could come together to solve tough challenges. And so that's the direction I pursued. I eventually found some success eventually as a research administrator, and that led me to here. But that's the professional story. It's probably important to note there's a personal angle to it, well, right? So about 13 years ago, I met what is now my lovely bride. She was a proud third-generation alum of this university. And I think like many things in life, from a higher power, we end up in unique situations. And certainly that was the case here. So 11 years ago, we were married here on campus. Our children were baptized
at the
Basilica.
Yeah.
Our children were baptized in the log cabin where Janine's grandparents had previously been married. And so life has come full circle, and so it's a beautiful thing.
Well, welcome back home,
Thank
literally,
you,
in many ways. So tell us a little bit about, Purdue is one of the top engineering universities and research centers in the country and world. How were we able to lure you away from Purdue and to come back into this really significant leadership role at Notre Dame?
Purdue was a great experience for me, and I had the opportunity to learn under two distinct leaders with very different styles, but both wildly successful. But I always said there were a few universities that I would consider leaving for, and Notre Dame was at the top of the list. And there's a very simple reason, Lou. It was a university on an upward trajectory that had a well-defined mission. And to be candid, there are very few places in academia, and I think we see this today, that both have an upward trajectory, but aren't trying to still identify who they are 200 years after their finding, right? And so Notre Dame had that trajectory. And then another kind of added benefit was, I had a pre-existing relationship with my predecessor, Bob Bernhardt. This is actually the fourth time I followed him in a job. When he left Purdue to come to Notre Dame, I was actually the faculty member they hired to replace him. Some of the laboratory leadership roles he had at Purdue prior to coming to Notre Dame, I had also had. And so that had really told me that I would know what kind of team had been built here. I had had the opportunity to work with the team here. And so I was able to hit the ground running, which was also an added benefit whenever you start a new job.
So Bob left this role, I think in his 70s, into retirement.
That's right.
So we expect you to be here for the long haul and follow Bob's footsteps in retirement.
I told Bob when I took the job, I'll be successful if I follow him a fifth time, which will be into retirement, right? So hopefully I'll be able to do that.
So it was an auspicious start.
It was.
You arrive here at Notre Dame, and the day that you begin, Notre Dame is admitted into the Association of American Universities,
That's
the
right.
AAU.
That's right.
All credit goes to you and your arrival. Tell us a little bit about the significance of that moment, and more importantly, not what it just means in the past to us, but what do you think it means for us going forward, and how is this just the start?
Well, I got to tell you a quick story before I answer your question. My very first day I start here, our provost, John McGreevy, and Father John come down to my office, and I had been obviously negotiating for a role, and a long-term goal that I kind of discussed with both of them was getting in the AAU. And so to have my first two meetings on my first day be, congratulations, that goal's now accomplished. I felt good, but we had to go back to the drawing board a little bit. No, being in the AAU is like being in some sense in any elite academic club. And so I think as much as it opens the door to us being with our proper peer group, recognizing the hard work that's happened from our faculty, staff, and students before then, it's also that we're starting at the bottom, right? Yeah. To be perfectly honest. And I shared this with our board of trustees recently. We have a place to go now. We're in the conversation. We're relevant to research happening globally. And we've been relevant for a long time, but our peers are now recognizing that. But that doesn't mean we're where we want to be, right? Yeah. And so I think the strategic framework and other documents that we've released, as well as aspirational statements by both Father John and Father Bob, point us in a direction that says, we want to continue to amplify research. We think it's a complementary experience to what we provide our undergrads and graduate students. It's not an either or, it's an and I think that makes you relevant in today's university. And so I think as we move forward, shaping how our mission and our unique mission, we're the only religious school in the AAU, allows us to say, how can we combine mission with now relevance and recognize relevance by our peers and put those to good use to advance the research of this academy and in partnership with others.
So when Father Soren 182 years ago talked about Notre Dame becoming one of the most powerful means for good, I think in some ways, for the first 160 years, we've thought about educating the heart, the mind, the soul of our students so they can go forth as alumni and help to transform this world. In the last 20 years especially, and even more recently when you joined us a year ago, the focus more is how can research for the common good, research for humanity, be a way to kind of take that mission that Father Soren envisioned. So tell us a little bit about the breadth and scope of the way that research can be a force for good in the world.
I think, Lou, I often think about research as Notre Dame is not something new, but a resurgence. Mm-hmm. One of the joys I have is I enjoy reading history, and as I prep for the transition to this role, I spent a long time diving into Notre Dame's research history. I think we sometimes forget we're the place where synthetic rubber was developed. We had the first wind tunnel in North America. We just celebrated the 125th anniversary of the first long-distance wireless transmission in America. And so Notre Dame has had a rich research history. but I think it has never been amplified, to your point, right, at being the level of what we can do in the classroom. And so I think what we now have with the framework of being a force for good, along with some concrete recommendations in the strategic framework for areas that we think we can focus and create unique differentiation for us, is really a pathway through which we can really see the impact that we want to have. And so whether that's in some of these areas like democracy and ethics, where we've already launched initiatives, or whether it's in some of them emerging now, like in mental health or bioengineering and life sciences, I think Notre Dame has a lot to give to the world in those spaces. And from our unique position and partnerships, I think we can amplify our impact in that space even deeper. And I think much like we've transformed this nation and really in many cases have global impact through our students in the past, now we can have it not only through our students, but through those students' research, right? It's research is not a faculty sport. It's not a staff sport. It's not a student sport. It's a team sport, just like football or basketball or lacrosse, which certainly is important this week. So, I think if we think about it in the same way, that's the type of impact we can have. And I'm really excited about what we have going on right now. So
I think a lot about the adage, discovery is the highest form of learning.
Yes.
And I remember when I was a student here many years ago in the early 80s, there were a lot of tutorial classes. A professor stood up, lectured, you took notes and studied those notes, and then, that's how you prepared for a test. Now, for many of our students from all the different disciplines, it's about primary research. It's about creating something new, being engaged in those teams in that creative process. And it seems like a deeper level of education, and the campus no longer is the classroom, but the world.
That's right.
Give us your take on that and why that's so vitally important as a pedagogical method.
Yeah. I think research is being like the purest form of experiential learning, right? You're implicitly taking something that has not been solved before and trying to come up with a logical answer for it using scientific methods and other well-established principles, right? And so I don't care if that's in the humanities where you're perhaps doing something new and creative and reinterpreting something from the past or looking for a paradigm for the future, or whether that's in science or engineering where you're doing basic discovery based on physical sciences or natural sciences, etc. Right? You can always move the ball forward. And so, I think about, I'm guessing you're like me. I have a college degree. Do I use what I learned in that college degree in the classroom on a daily basis? Candidly, no. Right? And I'm guessing the same is true for you, right? But do I take the basic principles of learning how to learn, breaking down problems, parsing them together, coming up with solutions? Absolutely. And I'm guessing the same is true for you. And I think the biggest gift Notre Dame can do is give its students, I think, is thinking about the world's hardest problems, being informed by our mission and our Catholic character and how we can think about and interpret those problems, and then applying it moving forward to really help tackle some of the world's hardest challenges.
So we have this amazing backdrop. I think there are, right now at this moment they've moved, but we have a clean room behind us. And what is the importance of a clean room and facilities and instrumentation in general that is so critical to the research enterprise? And tell us a little bit about what goes on and why is it important for a top university to have a great clean room?
No, I wanted to have a nice background for us today, so thank you for doing it here, Lou. This is the Notre Dame nanofabrication facility. A lot of top-notch universities around the world have a facility like this, but this is where we can design the next generation of materials, next generation of chips, the next generation of devices for things like micro and nano electronics, for quantum systems, you name it, in those spaces. And I can't think of anything in 2024 to represent in the background maybe more than this, because in some sense, this is the embodiment of where we're interacting with our response to the CHIPS Plus Science Act, which has been one of the largest critical investments that this nation's made in research in a very long time. And I'm very proud of the fact that Notre Dame is engaged in almost all aspects of the funded research and non-funded research in policy space and others coming out of CHIPS Plus Science, because I think it's a good example where Notre Dame, kind of being this newer, more visible kid on the AAU street, has shown we have some real chops and a lot to offer the world in this space. And I think this is a great embodiment of that, in this case in physical form.
All right, so I'm going to make it in big trouble with you right now.
Oh, yeah, it's okay. Go for it.
But when people ask me about you, I'll say to them that if you get to know Jeff Rhoads, you won't be surprised that his area of research expertise happens to be explosives, because as a personality,
Yes.
you are a tour de force. I mean, you are traveling all the time.
Yep.
You're making new relationships for the university. You're working with our faculty on so many different levels, and you are hungry. In fact, you're not hungry, you're starving.
Yes. Yep.
To take us to new levels. Last year, we had a record, I think, in about 280 million of sponsored research, and this year, it looks like you're bringing us in your first year to about 330 million.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell us a little bit about that drive and what you think you can do to take Notre Dame not just to the next level, but to several next levels.
Lou, let me start. First of all, research is a team sport. So as I appreciate the credit you give me. A lot of that's due to my predecessor and just the tremendous team that's been assembled along with our faculty, staff, and students. And all credit really goes to them. The fact that we can wake up every morning with a well-defined mission, as you said, Father Soren made a pretty simple, mission statement for us, right? And it's an easy one to embrace. That drives that hunger, right? And I think the truth is, and I think we recently heard AAU President Barbara Snyder say this, right, to our faculty and students. Notre Dame's at a research inflection point, and we can either really capitalize on it right now, or we can potentially miss the boat. And I think it's really critical that Notre Dame move quickly. We're seeing an unprecedented investment in federal funded research right now through things like the CHIPS Plus Science Act in particular, if it's fully appropriated, that we haven't seen in a long time. And we need to take advantage of that. We need to be able to project into those spaces. But we also need to address the fact that with increasing mistrust in higher education, et cetera, that topics like ethics, topics like democracy, addressing the global poverty crisis is where Notre Dame's mission also intersects that research. And if I think about those two intersections, just this unprecedented national investment in science technology and the world badly needing people to tackle issues like poverty and ethics and democracy, then to me, you get to a richness that it's very easy to get up every day and to say, we're going to go beat the street. We're going to go figure out how we can position our staff, our faculty, and our students to succeed. And that's what drives me every day. And I think it's what drives the team at large.
So let's talk about one of the big criticisms of higher education is that we tend to be really siloed and we don't work together across colleges, across departments, across centers and institutes. It seems to me that research is a way to break down some of those barriers, right? Absolutely. To get people with different areas of expertise to come and collaborate on a common issue that we're facing, like you mentioned, poverty and ethics and democracy. What are some of the ways that you think we can, other ways too, we can work on multidisciplinary fronts to have an impact on real world needs?
Well, again, I think mission drives everything here. And so, none of the world's hard problems. How do we feed everyone in this world, right? I think something very basic, right? How do we make sure that no one in this world wakes up in the morning hungry? That's not a problem that can be tackled solely by policymakers. It's not something that can be strictly agricultural scientists or agricultural engineers or agricultural economists, right? That's a problem that takes a lot of different disciplines leaning in together to really think about what systematically is wrong, what technologies are needed to address the problem, what policies and change agents need to happen and take place, what kind of influence do we have to have with global leaders, right? So I think, by the very nature, the hardest problems that society is yet to tackle are interdisciplinary in nature. And so, in the Office of Research and Notre Dame Research, we try to facilitate those interconnections and that interdisciplinarity. But I do it hand in hand with all of our deans, who are just a fantastic group of people to work with, right? And they want to tackle hard problems too. And so I think, it's a great opportunity. It's not always simple, right? Incentives have to be aligned, right? We have to have policies and procedures inside the university and outside as we engage with federal governments that facilitate that interdisciplinarity. But again, our mission tells us we shouldn't slow down. We should just charge ahead, and that's what we do. So
now I'm going to ask you a horrible question.
That's okay.
So it's like, which of your children is your favorite along those lines? And that is, with all of the research that's going on campus, share with us a story or two, a particular anecdote of something that really jumps off the page for you, that you're excited about, that we might not be thinking about.
So the great part of my job, Lou, is every day I learn about something new we're doing, right? It's there's nothing the same, because when you have a portfolio, as you indicated, 332 million in funded research and many, many projects that are not funded that are equally important to us, I have a new one every day, right? So I'll give you a couple that excite me right now. One that I think we just had celebrated a nice new announcement in recent weeks is some of our new research in human performance, which really for one of the first times across this nation merges experts from athletics and human performance in that domain, nutrition, sleep science, other things, with scientists and engineers, not only in the College of Science, where we had some early leadership, but I recently came from a meeting where we had representatives from anthropology and our College of Arts and Letters there. We had folks from the Mendoza School of Business bringing analytics to bear, and they're tackling huge questions, not only that impact our athletes, but can bring more distilled knowledge to health and well-being writ large for the population. They're collaborating with people like the U.S. military, who often think about human performance and where that's relevant, and how do we keep the men and women in uniform safe and healthy, right? And so that's a great example where we have interdisciplinary work coming together with what we wouldn't necessarily consider to be a traditional academic partner in athletics, but truly leaning into the student athlete with external partners to really move the ball forward in human understanding. So that's one fun one. Another one that I alluded to recently that I just was fascinated by kind of comes out of history. So we have a group of faculty looking at the original women printers in Venice and how the history books may not be telling the full story. And so reinterpreting some of the texts that they found and try to reset history to be proper about kind of what's happened in the past. And so, those are but just two small examples, but every day like that, I find another nugget that I find fascinating. I learn every day. That's a great part of my job, and it makes it really fun.
That's fantastic. So this is not just the faculty and PhD students, but you're also engaging undergraduate students in these labs and in the research and creative endeavors, et cetera. Talk about why this is so critical to the university and to the health and welfare of our undergraduate education.
I think a simple way to think about it, Notre Dame educates the next generation of leaders. Leaders tackle hard problems, right? And by having our undergrads exposed to, again, what I consider to be the purest form of experiential learning and research, ensures that our undergraduates see these open-ended, tough problems and at least give some thought about their processes that they may personally adopt in collaboration with others, right, to be able to try to tackle those. And so, very day one when I was on this campus, I gave an interview. And I said, I hope no one ever sets up as a dichotomy undergraduate education and research, because to me, both of those are a whole experience when combined and only combined. And I say that from someone that loved, as I told you at the beginning of this interview, I love the undergraduate classroom. It's where I spend a lot of my time at Purdue. But I truly feel there's only so much I can do in front of a lecture podium or doing collaborative education with my students. And that is not in any way, shape, or form diminished by what we do in the laboratory. It's complemented by it. And I feel very strongly about that.
Fantastic. So on another front, not only were we admitted on your first day to the AAU, but we have had a series of announcements with regard to the local, regional economy that General Motors and Samsung in this county are beginning construction or have begun construction on a $3.5 billion electric battery plant. Then we have the largest investment in the history of the state of Indiana, $11 billion Amazon Web Services, which is going to look at data storage as well as AI, artificial intelligence. And then it seems to be that we have another one on the horizon that we won't go into too much detail here, but another very significant initiative of that magnitude from another kind of world technology company. What does this mean for not only this area, but how can we as a university and our researchers be engaged with what is maybe kind of a new research triangle of sorts?
Yeah, Lou, I think one of the biggest lessons of higher education over the last 10 years is that universities are often the catalyst for both community and economic change. And so all over the United States in particular, but really it's a global phenomenon. You see these districts, these innovation districts popping up, where universities, because of their amazing ability to get different people to come together and be a convener, and their ability to catalyze inside their community can really make a generational difference in what happens in the local region, not only economically, but also socially. And I think we just happen to be at that exact crux. And again, what a better time to be at that crux than right now in the South Bend Elkhart region. And if you think about it, you mentioned some economic development projects, and those excite me. But what equally excites me is things we see around our community parks. Recently a great restoration project out of the Hesburgh Libraries with partners, and thinking about some of the baseball facilities and reflecting on the history of South Bend down there. Those things matter just as much to me, because I think Notre Dame can not only help drive economic change in our community, and we're seeing that through things like the LIFT initiative, where we're working with industry and helping them modernize to Industry 4.0 standards in this region, but also what we're doing through community engagement, whether it's through the Robinson Community Learning Center and everything else. And so those two things together, I think, really, again, shows Notre Dame's maturity as a university and impacting and setting the trajectory of the region. But now we also say, how does that accelerate what we want to do? And I think that's the exciting thing that comes next. So we're already having that engagement, but when you take a massive investment in, say, artificial intelligence and machine learning that Amazon's bringing, or you bring the next generation of electrification like Samsung and GM are bringing, what can we do to add on to that and to accelerate the global change that can result from those types of really unique, once in a generation type investments? I feel very confident that pretty soon this region's going to stop talking about the shutting and closing of Studebaker and actually talk about the future. And I think if we've done that, we'll have succeeded as a university, but we'll have succeeded together with our regional partners.
That's fantastic. So tell us, you recently had kind of a realignment of the reporting mechanisms and the Idea Center, which is oversees kind of all entrepreneurial activities. How do we translate intellectual property into commercial ventures? Now that is part of your bailiwick, something that you will help to oversee. What role do you think that does the Idea Center play in the future of Notre Dame?
Well, this very much dovetails on the previous question, Lou, because I think about the reputation of a university kind of consisting of two parts, right? There's the scholarly reputation, often characterized in things like university rankings and what do our alumni think about us. And that's often driven by some of the more, what I'll call academic purist type metrics. How many journal papers are our faculty producing? How many students are we graduating? Things like that. But I think equally important is the kind of perception of the university in the community sense and the public sense. And that's often driven by translational impacts. How do we engage with not only regional corporations, but global corporations? How good of an entrepreneurial ecosystem do we have surrounding the university? And so I think some of the recent changes you allude to allow us to streamline kind of end to end and create alignment, and to think about what can Notre Dame do to not only increase its scholarly reputation, but also make sure it's improving its community impact and kind of perception in those domains by having this all be aligned. And I think we've done a tremendous job over the last few years about kind of being creative in structures. And now we need to really accelerate that, right? We need to show, just like we moved into the AAU, that we're maturing our commercialization, technology transfer, incubation, de-risking processes to say, listen, we're at the point now where Notre Dame can do this in a world-class fashion, just like we've done with undergraduate education, and now we're doing with research, right?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity. Really blessed by your leadership on that front as well. So, really a tough question here is you're just completing your first year,
right?
About 11 months in. 10 years from now, you're still in this role, God willing. And what does this look like? Where have we come in terms of research at Notre Dame? What are we doing 10 years hence? What's your vision for where we will be then?
So I think two things, Lou. First of all, I want to be mentioned, not me, but Notre Dame mentioned, right amongst the elite universities doing research in this country. Because we won't be relevant amongst those research universities unless our undergraduate programs are fantastic. But our undergraduate programs will not be elite unless our research is fantastic. And so I want to make sure that we're mentioned with the Harvards, right, with the Yales, with the Princetons, the very best schools that we think exist and are really world defining in this country. But almost all of this interview so far, we've talked about Indiana and the United States. And so I think the second piece of this is how do we take that research reputation and spread it across the globe? And I know we're making a lot of very concrete steps to make that happen. But I'll feel really good when people mention Notre Dame or Notre Dame, that we're not necessarily talking just about a cathedral in France, right? We're talking about a global research university in South Bend, Indiana. And that's when I know we'll make it. And I think we can do a lot over the next 10 years to make sure that happens.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit, if we could, one final question. What is your why? You began, we know your passion was in the classroom, teaching students. Now you're vice president of research, overseeing and coordinating a huge effort. What continues to get you up and excite you every morning?
Two things. I think, the reason I actually enjoy research administration is because it has a force multiplying effect. And I serve at the behest of our faculty, our staff, and our students. And my hope is I can force multiply what they're doing so that they can have a bigger impact on the world and be a bigger force for good. That personally drives me as well, right? And so that is the why. That's why I wake up in the morning, and no matter what tough challenge we're facing today, plow through and wake up just as happy the next morning, right? And then the second, frankly, is the camaraderie that exists here. Something that I think is often or overlooked is just the alignment amongst the leadership team, and really alignment across the whole university of having that same North Star, the same lodestone, right, that tells us this is where we're going. That is so rare in academia, and we are truly blessed, and I use that word intentional here to say that we're all on the same page and going the same direction. And that's something that's hard to beat.
That's a beautiful way to end things. So normally at this point, what we do is we close with a prayer to Our Lady, the patron of Notre Dame. But we're going to take you in a slightly different direction today. And Jeff is going to close us with another very important prayer, and something that is thematic to our discussion.
Absolutely. So I didn't want to buck tradition, but in prepping for today, I thought it might be nice, to take a moment and recognize St. Albert the Great, the patron saint of natural sciences. Many believe kind of, one of the doctors of the church, one of the original kind of researchers in the church. And I thought I borrowed a brief prayer from the Missionary Society.
Is he represented in?
Absolutely. On the outside of Jordan Hall, there's a relief sculpture of him there, and so present on campus, I think, in more ways than one. So if you'll join me in prayer. God of truth, you endowed St. Albert with the gift of combining human wisdom with divine faith. May the pursuit of all human knowledge lead to a greater knowledge and love of you. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, God, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Jeff, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Really enjoyed being with you. Thrilled that you are here at Notre Dame. The future is so exciting with you and the team and all that you guys are doing. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. Take care. God bless, and go Irish.